On January 2nd, 1935, a man by the name of Roland T. Owen, he checked into the hotel president. She just noticed that every time she looked at Owen, he looked fearful and afraid and worried. And to his horror, he finds Owen on his hands and knees in front of the door, holding his head with blood profusely coming out of his head. So the cops and doctors came. They asked him, "Hey man, who did this to you?" And he just answered, "Nobody." Turns out there was not one person named Roland T. Owen that existed. And now we have his name. It is What's going on? What's going on, late night family? We back in the building, bringing you another exciting episode of Late Night Conversations with Unk and Nephew. I am your host, King J, also known as Nephew, and to my left is my co-host,
JR.
Before we get started on today's episode, wherever you are watching y'all's podcast on, whether that be Facebook, YouTube, or if you're listening to it, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from, do us a big favor. Hit that like button, hit that follow button, and if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Punch that bell in the face so you get notified every time we drop a video. That is every week on Friday morning at 8 a.m.
Yup.
Man, I got an exciting episode for you tonight, and for the audience.
All right.
I got a good true crime story.
Hit me hard. You already know how I do.
We did. What? So, in Kansas City, Missouri, there is a hotel that has been standing tall since 1926 called the Hotel President on Baltimore Avenue. Though this building has stood for almost 100 years and it is still open to this day, the same amount of time that hotel has held a dark secret. Today's story is that secret. This is a story about the murder in room 1046.
All right.
So without further ado,
let's go.
Let's jump into this story. On January 2nd, 1935, a man by the name of Roland T. Owen, he checked into the hotel president. He wanted an interior room facing several floors up and facing away from the street.
Okay.
He said he wanted one night. That's all he asked for, was just a one-night stay. They described him as early 20s with brown hair, a cauliflower ear, and he had a scar on the side of his scalp, on his head. A man named Rudolph Props took him to his room on the 10th floor. He noticed, again, he didn't have any luggage, but he did pull out of his pockets, out of his coat, a hairbrush, a comb, and some toothpaste.
Okay.
So he mentioned to the bellboy that he had stayed a previous night at a nearby hotel, but he just thought their rates were way too high. So after they kind of settled in, here's a weird thing about this hotel. The doors at this hotel, they could only be locked from the outside. They didn't have locks on the inside.
So they locked you in?
Yeah, so if you got locked from the outside, they would lock you in, which I thought was weird when I was doing research for this case. And granted, it's 1935,
right.
You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, that's just unsafe, dog, to me. That's just unsafe. But anyway, so they handled their business. He took off, Later that day, there was a maid. Her name was Mary Soptic. She was doing her daily rounds when she stopped at room 1046. She saw Owen sitting in the dark in the corner on the chair.
Okay.
Just in the dark.
Just sitting.
Yeah, just sitting there. So she apologized, and he said, "No, don't worry." He insisted that she just clean up the room while he sat there. She kind of noticed that he had a lamp fairly lit. I mean, it was dark, but it was fairly lit, the lamp. And he had the curtain kind of drawn just a little bit. He just kept looking out the curtain, like, out the window.
But not to the street.
Yeah, not to the street. This is the interior of the hotel, I guess. So it was just an odd encounter. So she kind of cleaned up, and he got up. Owen got up out of the chair. He combed his hair, and he told the maid, "Please don't lock the door. I'm expecting some friends later." So she said, okay. He left. She finished cleaning up. She took off. Everything went. So about a little bit later, around 4 p.m., Mary came by again to replace the towels that she had taken from the morning.
Right.
So She showed up around 4. She actually she opened the door, and it was pitch black. It was just dark in there. So she thought he wasn't there.
Right.
She walked in, and she saw Owen laying in the bed, just in the dark. She presumably thought he was drunk. He was just kind of laying there, just kind of out of it.
Right.
There was a note on his nightstand right next to the bed. A handwritten note that said, Dawn, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait.
Dawn?
Dawn. Yeah. Dawn. D-O-N. It just said, I will be back in 15 minutes. Wait.
Right.
So she changed the towels, and then she left, and she left the door unlocked again. The next day, Mary was working again, and she went to the room like normal on her daily rounds. She went into the room about 10:30, and the door was locked. So she just assumed Owen had left.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So
'Cause
it was locked from the outside.
From the outside. Yeah, yeah. So she just assumed, oh, okay, maybe he's gone.
Right.
So she pulled out her spare, she unlocked the door, and she walked in, and Owen was in there, sitting in that same chair he was in the day before.
Right.
And just sitting there. She apologized again.
And it's still in pitch dark, or?
Yeah, it was still dark. She apologized again. He said, no problem. And she just continued to clean the room. But she had noticed, and I guess she had noted this to the police.
Right.
She just noticed that every time she looked at Owen, he looked fearful and afraid and worried on his face. He just looked like he was real worried about something. So she cleaned like normal, and she left. And, well, right before she left, let me not glance over this. Right before she left, the phone rang. Owen picked it up, and he said, no, Dawn, I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast. No, I'm not hungry. And then while he was holding the phone in his hand, he struck up a conversation with Mary and said, you know, hey, do you have to service the whole 10th floor? How did, you know, this and that?
Right.
And then, you know, after a brief conversation, he hung up the phone, and then she got done with her cleaning, and that was it. He hung up the phone, she left.
So it was just pretty odd.
Yeah, it was just an odd encounter for her. Like, what the hell? Like, this dude is weird. So, you know, like I said, that was around 10:30. So around 4 p.m., she's coming back to replace towels. When she went to the room, right before she was going to enter the room, she heard 2 voices talking.
Okay.
And so out of courtesy, she knocked on the door. Expecting to hear Owen's voice, she heard a different voice with a really deep voice. And they said, who is it? She said, fresh towels. The voice responded and said, we don't need any.
Damn.
She knew that was a lie.
Right.
Because she had just taken the towels at 10:30.
She took the towels in the morning, yeah.
So she knew that he didn't have any. So, but out of respect, she left. She left anyway. This is where things start getting weird, dog. So, the next day, the switchboard operator, her name was Della Ferguson. She was working her daily wake-up calls.
Right.
You know, because I guess back then in the 30s, you know,
wasn't it the that one speaking to the over here
with the cone? Yeah. So I guess back then, you know, like now you have a wake up call, you just tell the front desk, hey, give me a wake up call, 10 a.m., whatever, they'll call you up. I guess here, you know, they have the same thing even in the 30s, dog.
Right.
And they would ring you up, but it was switchboard operator.
Right.
And so if the phone was hung up on the receiver, you know, if the phone was off the receiver, I mean, the light would be shining, showing, hey, the phone's off. You need to put it back on.
Right.
So the next day, she's going through her daily routine of wake-up calls, and she noticed the button was lit up for room 1046. So she sent the bellboy to check it out, which was the guy who took him to his room, who took Owen. So she sent him out there. He knocked on the door and yelled, you know, loudly, hey, is anybody in there? And he forgot his key. He heard a faint voice say, come in, turn on the lights. But he didn't have his key, so he thought, well, man, this dude is drunk, because if he wasn't, he'd have come open the door.
Right.
So he just yelled out, put the phone back on the receiver, and then he went back downstairs. About an hour later, the light was still on. So she sent another bellboy. His name was Harold Pike.
Okay.
He had a key, and so he opened the door. He found Owen laying in his bed, drunk and completely naked. But he also noticed that there was some dark patches around the bed, like around where he was laying. But he didn't
dark patches, like
I guess in the sheeting of the bed, like I guess around him it just looked dark, like if he
Okay.
was laying in something, or I don't know if he thought, man, maybe he pissed himself or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't really like pay no mind. He just hung the phone up on the receiver and took off. So about another hour went by, man. The phone was off the receiver again.
Okay.
So she sent props again, the first bellboy,
Right.
not the second one. This time he had his key. But no one answered the door when he knocked. So he's like, man, he opened it up, man. And to his horror, he finds Owen on his hands and knees in front of the door, holding his head with blood profusely coming out of his head.
Like a gash or something.
Yeah, something. I mean, his head just looks busted open. So his first instinct is, let me cut the light on. So he shuts the light on, and dog, there's blood splattered over all the walls. There's blood splattered all on the ceiling.
What?
Owen is completely covered in blood. And, I mean, it's bad, dog.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So he freaks out. He puts the phone on the receiver, runs downstairs to get some help from his management team, right? So he comes back, and when they try to open the door, man, I guess Owen tried to get up and collapsed in front of the door. So they had a hard time budging the door open.
Also, the door went.
Yeah, the door shut on itself. So by the time they were able to finally squeeze their way in, they helped Owen up, and they walked him to the bathroom, and he sat down on the toilet. Turns out he was bound by his wrist, ankles, and his neck. And his neck had heavy bruising around his neck from where the rope was at. So, man, they called the police. They called the doctors. They showed up, and they untied all the ropes and stuff. And
So he was still bound.
yeah, he was still bound. So they untied everything. Just off observation, the doctors could see he had multiple stab wounds in the chest that had punctured his lung, and he had a severe fracture in his skull that all the blood was coming from. So the cops and doctors came. They asked him, hey, man, who did this to you? He just answered, nobody.
Obviously Dawn, but anyways.
Right? So he says, nobody. And they're like, okay, no, somebody did this to you. He replies, no, I fell in the bathtub. And so obviously they don't believe him.
Oh yeah.
And but after a brief back and forth, dude, Owen just collapses into the tub, and he's out. So they rush him to the nearby hospital, and he fell into a coma on the way there. And the next day he passed away from his injuries. So he died. Okay, so now investigation begins.
Right.
The cops start kind of doing a little bit of digging. So they analyzed his blood, man. And because, at that time, forensics and stuff was kind of limited, but they had a little bit.
Okay.
So they were able to analyze his blood and the moisture level, and they could tell that his injury or whatever assault happened between 4 to 5 a.m. And so that ruled out the bellboys, which not completely. They still probably could have came in and did it or whatever, but more likely they weren't working at that time. So you know what I mean.
Well,
between
Mary
those hours,
or whatever her name was went at 10:30 for her towels, but he was just laying in the bed, right?
In the bed, yeah. Okay.
With the lights off.
Yeah.
So she never saw anything.
She never saw anything, right? Okay. So here's the crazy thing, dog. As far as investigating in the room, they really didn't find much that helped him.
Right.
There was a couple things like a half-lit cigarette, his stuff that he had left. And
right.
I think they said like a clothespin was found on the floor. The only thing that was of any importance, and really it wasn't very much important because it couldn't link it to anything, was a broken glass. There was a broken glass on the floor that maybe they're thinking was used to hit him over the head with.
Right.
It was a broken, shattered glass on the floor. So they did find small fingerprints on the telephone.
Okay.
And they believed those to be of a woman. So after
because of the size.
Yeah, I guess because of the size of the hand. So after testing all the staff, there was no match. And at that point, those fingerprints become irrelevant because there's no leads.
Right, 1935,
And then, at that time, it's not advanced. So at this point, they're like, you're all right, dog. Shit.
It scared me there for a second. Thought they had my fingerprints.
What was I doing around 1935?
Right?
Oh shit. So next thing is police is like, well, let's reach out to his next of kin, notify him of his family's death, of their family member's death. So they reach out to L.A. because that's what Roland T. Owen said. That's where he was from. They reached out to the police department out there. They did some research. Turns out there was not one person named Roland T. Owen that existed.
So he had an AKA, or what do you call that?
Looked like he had an alias.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, man, police don't know what to do. I mean, they have an unidentified person. He had no identification on him.
Right.
So at this point, it's starting to look pretty cold,
Right.
So here's a couple leads they had as they did some digging. So on the 3rd of February, a woman named Jean Owen, with no relation to Roland.
Yeah.
She checked in with her boyfriend and stayed next door to Roland.
Okay.
But they were marked not relevant. After doing some digging, they were like, man, they had no relevance to the case.
But they didn't
just
hear
the name.
Or nothing.
Yeah, they didn't hear anything. They didn't. Just the names, I guess, is what they were trying to put together. But a small little piece came out with, which I didn't know this, but in the 30s, they had elevator operators, which I should know because of movies. But back then you didn't just go in, press a button, and take you there. You had a guy that would turn on the elevator, it'd go up, and then he'd stop it. So the elevator operator named Charles Blotcher said a woman of the night was taken to the 10th floor. You know what that is, right?
Oh yeah.
They,
come on.
You know what I'm saying? They had a little fun. You know what I'm saying?
Supposedly.
Yeah. What did they say? Allegedly, she was a woman of the night.
Well, alleged.
But
which they had quite a bit of them back then, anyways.
You know what I mean? And they said, that she was known for that. She was a local known for that.
Oh, so she was local.
Yeah. So they said, Charles said that he took her to the 10th floor, and she told him she was meeting a man in room 1046. So he took her up and then went back down to the lobby. Well, then he was summoned again to the 10th floor. So he goes up, and it's the same lady. She said she made a mistake and was really there. I guess she was really meaning to meet a man in room 1024 because that was the only room that had a light on. So she said she was going to stay there.
Okay.
So she stays, and then about 30 minutes later, she called him to go back up. So he goes back up. It's the same lady. And so she takes her to the lobby, then she leaves. A little bit later that evening.
What time was this?
It didn't say what time that was, but it just said it was in the evening.
Okay.
But it does say this, that she went back around like 9 o'clock with a man. She showed up with another guy.
Okay.
And they were taken to the 9th floor. They stayed there, and then it said they both left around 4 in the morning. So could have been another man bought some time, you know what I'm saying? At this point, they looked into her because I guess she had mentioned the room 1046.
Right.
But eventually she got thrown out because they said, well, the only relevance she has to the case is that she mentioned that room.
Right.
I mean, she could have just been working that night.
Right.
You know what I mean? So eventually that lead grew cold. Here's the crazy thing, though. They're not sure if Owen was even there that night completely at the hotel room.
Okay.
Because there was a sighting of Owen by a man named Robert Lane on 13th Street. So apparently, around 11 p.m., he saw a man dressed in his undershirt, trousers, and just shoes. And he said Owen flagged him down, and he thought he was a taxi. So when he pulled over, he apologized, like, man, sorry, I thought you were a taxi, but can you please give me a ride somewhere?
Right.
So he agreed. He got in the car, kind of started exchanging a little conversation with him. He said that the man looked really angry, and then he had mentioned, I'm going to kill these people for doing what they did to me. And he had noticed there was a big gash on his arm.
Oh, okay.
You know? Yeah, there was a deep cut on his left arm, and he was holding it, kind of cupping it so the blood didn't spill out into the car. He said that he drove a little bit of ways to where, I guess, where taxis normally, kind of meet up. He dropped Roland off, and he thanked him. And then he said that Roland jumped into a cab and started honking the horn to get the attention of the driver in the diner.
Come on.
Yeah, like, come on, I need a ride. And so he said that he was just sitting there in the car waiting, and he drove off, and that was the last time he saw him.
Okay.
So
he can verify that.
The reason why he can verify that is because that same man visited the funeral home that was holding Owen's body, and kind of saw the man and saw the gash in the arm and said, "Yep, that was him." But the police said they weren't certain if it was. They weren't convinced because nobody from the hotel had any sightings of Owen leaving.
Right.
And they were sure that they would have saw a bloody man walking into the hotel room.
Right.
They would have caught that. But who's to say they missed it? Maybe they were busy and he came in and I don't know. I mean, he would have had to have taken the elevator, right?
That's what
Unless
I'm saying,
maybe he took the stairs. I don't know. I mean,
usually I think what I remember from the 30s, and not remember my personally.
Oh, I was like, you were there?
But movies like the bellhop takes you up,
right?
You know,
that's what I'm saying. I thought that was kind of strange too.
Yeah.
But and maybe I was like, well, maybe that's just a one in a, maybe maybe it was a coincidence. But man, there was other sightings. Some people from 12th Street, like I guess it was like a little area where like there was liquor stores and stuff. Right. There was 2 other sightings where people said they saw Owen with 2 women at a liquor store on 12th. So there was other sightings of him out around the same time.
So it could be more.
Maybe it could be more
towards that he was. Yeah, that he did leave.
Exactly, dog. So at this point, they checked with the hotel. They're kind of scrambling for answers. They checked with the hotel that Owen said he stayed at last.
Right.
And there was no Roland T. Owen there that had checked in. But there was a man matching his description that checked in under the name Eugene K. Scott.
Okay.
But when they reached back out to L.A., there was no Eugene K. Scott.
So he had multiple aliases.
He was staying yes. He was staying in different spots, using different names. But in that same hotel that he checked in as Eugene, he asked for the same thing. A room on the top floors, facing away from the street.
Right.
And I mean, it's the same. He had this. He was doing the same thing at every hotel.
Right.
And he only was checking in for a night. So, at this point, the funeral home gets the body, and they kind of go public. And they say, "Hey, we got this unidentified man. You know how it goes. Trying to find some people to come identify him,
relatives or whatever."
So there was many people who visited his body. There was actually one man who called in and said, "I believe that's my cousin's." A relative, and so they both came up there. The lady looked, and I guess they thought it was her brother,
right?
But she confirmed it wasn't him.
Okay,
that was out of there. There was a wrestler promoter who reached out and said, "Man, let me go check. It might be my missing wrestler who I've hadn't heard from."
Well, yeah.
And Owen had a cauliflower ear, so
I was gonna say he was a boxer or something.
Right. So the promoter shows up, looks at the body, and says, "No, that's not him."
Okay.
So at this point, man, the case goes cold until March. The funeral home announced that the body would be buried in a potter's field. And then the funeral home received a call that same day they announced that. There was a person on the phone, and they asked if the burial would be delayed so that they could pay for a grave at Memorial Park Cemetery in Kansas City. So when the funeral home director,
they want the body moved in Kansas City.
They want the body buried at that memorial grave. They don't want it at that potter's field.
Well, that's strange,
right? So the funeral home director starts questioning him, and he says, "Why do you want it delayed? What's the deal with that?" He said he wants it delayed, and also he said he wants him buried in Kansas City because that's where he's going to be buried near my sister. And so the funeral director is like, "Man, does this guy know him?" So he starts asking him questions. When asked about the murder, they said he was having an affair behind his fiance's back. And the 2 women teamed up to kill him. And he said, cheaters usually get what's coming to them. And then hung the phone up.
That's what he said?
That's what the guy said who's asking to pay for the funeral.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep. He said cheaters usually get what's coming to them and hung the phone up. So,
but there's no way of tracing that or nothing like that.
So the funeral home reports that call to the police. A couple days later, an envelope shows up to the funeral home with $25 inside it.
For the burial.
And that was enough to pay for the burial, which back then in the 30s, damn, that seemed like the time to die. You know what I'm saying? What is it now? $4 to $6 grand?
If that.
Maybe a minimum.
At minimum.
Yeah, bury me for $25, brother. I guess they did the equate. It's almost like 800 and something days in today's money.
Back to something,
yeah. But that wasn't the only phone call that was made on the behalf, dude.
Of that dude?
There was 2 more phone calls to 2 different florists in the city that was made from a payphone. The calls were sent to like a florist, you know,
Right.
and they said they wanted flowers sent to the funeral home, and that they would be paying for them. When they asked who they were, they just hung up. Then a couple days later, 2 envelopes showed up to 2 separate places for $5 in them to cover the flowers. So the cemetery was held, and detectives showed up disguised as mourners and pallbearers.
Right.
Because they wanted to see if the person who paid for the funeral would show up to pay respects.
Right.
And nobody showed up.
So there was nobody there at the funeral, just...
Yeah, nobody, just the people that showed up, you know.
Right, yeah.
Maybe a couple, but they for sure, nobody showed up. You know what I mean? So, this is what's crazy, dog. This is what gets crazy. So, in May, a newspaper article came out that reported about Roland's death. And, you know, it just kind of showed, like, I guess they had a picture of his autopsy. Kind of like the facial part,
right.
You know, on the table. And they put out an article. Well, this article circulated for about 1.5 years, man.
Dang.
Well, 1.5 years later, a woman from Alabama, from Birmingham, Alabama, saw the article, and in disbelief, she said, "I think that's my friend's son, who I haven't seen in 2 years." So she goes straight to the mom, shows her the article, and man, to the mom's horror, she says, "That's my son."
Oh, wow.
And the mom's name was Ruby Ogletree. And now we have his name. It is Artemis Ogletree.
Artemis
Ogletree, dog.
Kind of like Igor. But
just kind of like our last story. What is up with these names, dog, from the 1900s? Igor. Artemis.
I've heard Igor, but I don't think I've ever heard Artemis.
I've never heard Artemis. That sounds like a disease. And you got the Artemis disease. Nah.
Oh, you're going to die.
Yeah, man.
That's wrong.
So, his name was Artemis Ogletree, and he left California in 1934. He had been keeping in touch with his mom by mail for 1.5 years.
Okay.
Or no, for about a year. Not 1.5 years, but about a year. She said the scar, and this is how she knew it was her son, because that scar on the side of his head, she confirmed that it was from when he was a child. It was a grease burn that burned his scalp.
Oh, dang.
A grease accident.
So, what was his race? Do you know? Or don't? I never said.
No, I didn't. I'm sure he was like a white man.
Could have been Italian.
Yeah, it could have. Yeah, and I don't know
what.
Ogletree.
Yeah, I'm gonna say yeah.
Sounds like a European name to me. Ogletree.
Ogletree.
Can't be a Mexican.
Artemis.
You for sure can't be.
You know he's not Hispanic.
You're not Hispanic named German. Artemis.
He ain't Italian.
Ogletree.
Oh.
All right, Miss Ogletree. Nah, that don't sound right. Yeah, that don't sound right.
So yeah, he probably was
right.
European.
Yeah, he probably a European descent. Nah, I don't know, man. But she confirmed he was 17.
Oh, he was chavalo.
He was young, man. He wasn't, and they described him early 20s. The hotel, the President Hotel.
Right.
He was 17. So, dog, here's the weird thing. The mom said that she was still receiving notes from Artemis even after his death. So, oddly, they were typewritten with a typewriter.
Right.
Which she thought was strange because she didn't believe her son knew how to use one.
Right.
He would always write her. So, she received a letter from Chicago, or, saying he was in Chicago. Then she received another letter saying he was in New York enjoying his time. And that he was going to travel to Europe. And then she got one final note that said, "Hey, my ship is sailing, and I'm getting out of here."
Going to Europe, yeah.
So ended up a little bit later. She ended up receiving a call from a man in Memphis, Tennessee. Hey, Memphis, Tennessee is important, and I'll tell you why here in a minute.
Okay.
She received a call from a man in Memphis, Tennessee, saying that he was so grateful for her son because he saved his life in a fire. And he wanted to tell her that he was married and that he was going to be moving to Egypt and he wouldn't be reaching out to his mother anymore. Is what that man told him on the phone.
I was going to say,
yeah, that man, not the man. Yeah, the man said that this message was from Artemis.
From Artemis, yeah.
Just saying that he's now married and that he's moving to Egypt and he's not going to reach out no more. So she thought that was odd too. You know what I mean? That was strange. From the stranger in Memphis.
Right.
Like, that's crazy. And so Ruby went to the police to try to help him find more information, and they actually found out that he stayed at another hotel nearby the president again and shared a room with a man. That they never identified the man,
Okay.
but they speculated it was Don.
Well, I heard him say Don. So what's with the hotels not checking out, not having to have IDs?
Well,
I don't know if they had IDs back then.
I don't think they checked that back in the day. Because back in the day, you could just check in under whoever name you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing, dog. I guess it's not so crazy because when you check in and you have guests with you, you know, as long as it's reported. You know, like if I check into a hotel,
yeah,
and it's me and my wife and say my brother,
right?
They're not gonna question who my guests are. They
right.
just want to know who I am.
Exactly.
So I guess that's not so crazy that they
right.
didn't ask who Don was, but they believe that they're speculating that it was Don who he stayed with at the other hotel.
Right.
So, and they believe that Don may have been the one that killed him, man. And let me tell you why.
That was my first thought, but
right?
Go ahead.
And you said that earlier.
I said that earlier, yeah.
Let me tell you why they think it was Don, and this is crazy, This is crazy. This is where it's gonna get crazy.
Okay.
So, a few years later, in 1937, a man named Joseph Martin was arrested in New York for killing a man he shared a room with, and he was caught trying to ship the body to Memphis, Tennessee. Two connections there.
Right.
So one, they caught him in New York, and that also was a letter that was sent to the mom.
Right.
He was trying to ship a body to Memphis, Tennessee.
To Memphis,
where
she
that
received
man,
a letter
where she
saying
received
he
a call.
was married to go to Egypt.
Things are kind of adding up, ain't they?
Well, I mean, is it adding up or is it just coincidental?
Or connected? I don't know. It looks like things are connecting, right?
It sounds like it.
That to me, that's what it sounds like. So he had multiple aliases. This is where it gets deeper, dog.
Okay.
So they found out that this man, Joseph Martin, has multiple aliases, and one of them was Donald Kelso.
Don, a.k.a. Don. So they caught him. So.
Right? So they arrested him. So they requested his handwriting to write a note. They compared it to the notes that Ruby had, and it looked like it was a match.
Right.
Here's the crazy thing. No charges were ever filed for Artemis's murder on Don. And for some reason, and doing the research, I never found out why. It doesn't say. There's no public information on
why he was never
indicted, why they didn't further investigate or anything.
Right.
I don't know if they just didn't have enough on him to convict him, but dude, after that the case goes cold.
All they had was,
I guess, just
letters.
Letters and a name, and
yeah.
They were kind of connecting, but I guess that's not enough evidence.
Yeah, nothing proof to do.
So the case goes cold for the last time.
For the last time?
After that,
nothing else
ever pops up.
So whatever happened to Donald?
So I guess he went to prison, man, for the murder that he was dealing with the other one, but
right.
he never got convicted, man. So there's a couple theories that float around, and for the most part, the biggest theory, which a lot of people are really, really, speculating is true, is Don killed him.
Well, that was my first guess right off the bat. So they didn't track where that body was going to be. Where he said he was going to take the body to Memphis. It was
right.
Who's receiving that in Memphis?
That's
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, who is receiving the body? Where is he sending it to?
I'm not no PI or nothing, but
yeah.
I do have my brain, and you know how it works. So I'm like, hold on. I mean, that's a crazy story. I mean,
that's wild, right?
Yeah, because I mean, to me, there's, I don't want to say evidence, but there's leads you can follow up.
Yeah, exactly.
That may or may not have been followed, or
maybe they weren't followed enough, man.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. Like, bro, y'all had Don in jail.
To me, the theory is there's no theory. To me, Don did it. I mean,
right? That's what I think.
It's obvious that this lady married the
maid.
The maid heard him on the phone talking to a Don.
Right, and then there was a letter saying, "Don, I'll be back."
Where he was like,
"The voice,
dude, we
don't need towels. We're good." Like,
and then,
right?
but then, Aramis, right?
Artemis.
Artemis was, I don't want to eat breakfast, or
Yeah, like
he's pissed
I don't
off
want
at
to
Dawn. He said Dawn, so he's pissed off at Dawn.
That's what it sounded
and then
like.
she comes back and we don't need no towels.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
See, I
mean, there's a lot of, I guess, a theory. I mean,
yeah, at this point, I mean, it's a theory, but it's a good one. It's a good one because, and as I was doing the research, I'm like, oh, it's all connecting, bro. Like, if you set it up on a web and you just start connecting webs here to here, if she's receiving letters that he's in Chicago, Chicago, New York, and these are the places that Dawn is in.
And now in our time, we're 90 years from when it happened.
Yeah.
So our minds, I'm not saying we're smarter than the people from 1935.
But maybe at the time.
They didn't have the technology.
For sure.
They had the brains. I mean, they did catch serial killers or whatever, which they weren't documented as serial killers back in the day like that.
Right.
But you're right, nephew. I mean, to me, where was the body going to? Who was the recipient?
Yeah.
Did he get questioned? How do you know Aramis?
Yeah. Artemis.
Aramis.
That sounds like I don't know, like come ship your package at Aramis.
So.
But yeah. I mean,
there's so many things.
There's so many questions unanswered. And why? Why did y'all do?
I can understand the bellhops and Mary.
Right.
Being so dark in that room. I know the switches back then were a little bit different than now, but
maybe out of courtesy they didn't want to flip it on, or I don't know.
I mean, if you got a little bit of light and you see like you said, it was dark around here,
like kind of dark around the bedding.
Us now, well, you and I probably like, oh, that could be some. Maybe they're not. They weren't.
Maybe they weren't thinking like that at the time. Yeah, because maybe like at that time. Like murders weren't going on in that hotel like that. It's not like that was a reoccurring thing.
One thing maybe we should have checked is how many murders have been occurred in that hotel. Maybe, like I said, they had, or maybe a murder like that never happened
since then or whatever.
Close to them. Or
I want to look up and see if that hotel's haunted, dog. It's still standing. I think it's the Hilton President in Kansas City, but man,
you think it's haunted? I don't think it's haunted. I think.
Know, man.
I mean. How bad of a person was Artemis?
They don't know. Nobody really knows him. According to Ruby, he was a good kid. According to her,
right?
But yeah, man. The
That's
case.
What I'm saying. I'm not saying a good person come back and haunt a place.
Yeah, because in some of the research I was doing, I came across a couple more theories that they were saying that he was involved in some shady people and. You know what I mean? Like in some shady business.
1935, there was a lot going on. Kansas City, Chicago, they were big cities.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
There was
and then him being so young.
What they call them back then? Mobsters?
Yeah, mobster times.
Not the gangsters.
Especially like Chicago, right?
Yeah, Chicago
was a big mobster town.
Bugsy Malone and,
them big guys back in the day. See, that's what I'm saying. There's there's a couple of theories floating around that he was involved with some shady people and some bad dealings.
Well, but which would be strange because being 17 years old.
See, that's the thing, man. Being so young, leaving the house like that is just crazy to me. Here's a second theory that's kind of more prevalent. The first one, that one's the most widely accepted. Here's the second one, the affair one. About that he was having an affair and they killed. So here's the deal.
Okay.
They're doing the
17
research.
Years old,
right? Yeah. But they used to get married back then at that age. Back in the olden days. But because of that lady the guy that called.
Oh, the two guys.
Yeah, the two. Yeah.
Saw him with two girls at the liquor store.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Maybe they got together and said, you know what?
Let's go ahead and take care of this guy. Yeah. I don't know.
If he was with them, maybe they convinced him that, we understand, buys a drink. If he's passed out drunk, like you said, he was found drunk, tied up, hogtied. Two women would have to do that in order to be able to kill a man. Man.
So, dog, here's a couple things. I guess the reason why that one's pretty accepted too is because of the call that was made to the funeral home for the person that paid for the funeral. Was that he was having an affair behind his fiance's back. They teamed up and killed him.
Right.
So, and then you hear, the time when she goes in there And she's like, maybe Don got together with these two women and they hatched a plan to kill him.
Right.
You know, maybe Don wasn't, you know,
maybe he didn't play as big a part as we think.
Yeah, maybe
he was like,
maybe he got roped in, or I don't know,
or maybe he roped them in so he wouldn't have his fingerprints or. So
yeah, man, and because the fingerprints on the phone were women, so that's a good theory
allegedly,
too.
Because
they couldn't
small,
tell.
You know, there's some men that I've seen have small hands. You know?
You got soft hands, boy.
Yeah, I don't. So we work in the warehouse. So yeah.
So yeah, man. I mean, so that kind of. I mean, there's theories that's a good theory too. I'm in my mind. I'm gonna do some more research on how did the prostitution game work in the 30s. Did they have pimps? Because now this makes sense on this part. Maybe he went out, was getting drunk, got with these two girls, and the pimp came in and killed the dude. You know what I mean? Like,
the other two didn't say they were women of the night. The first one that asked for room 1046, but allegedly was supposed to be in 1042.
Yeah, 1024. Yeah.
Once they questioned her, I made a mistake. Go ahead.
Wrong room. Yeah, I'll go ahead and go.
That wouldn't work nowadays, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then she showed up with another man. So it's like, who was that man?
With the pimp?
They were saying it could have been the business, the another guy who bought some time. But who is that guy she showed up with? They left at 4 a.m. Right. The murders happened in between 4, or the accident between 4 to 5 a.m. They left at 4 a.m. Yeah, a little bit after 4.
That's
so.
That was that Dawn?
Was it Dawn and the girl?
And nobody recognized him, even though the police caught him later on, and they couldn't identify him because.
But they didn't. It looks like they didn't do no more research.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
that's
some people,
you know.
They see back in the day, there was a straight up lineup, and it wasn't pictures like it is now.
Oh, like the ones where they stand up and.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore. Now, if you go to jail, if they show you pictures.
Yeah, of the suspects.
The alleged suspect.
Right.
He could be or could not be.
One of these guys, yeah.
The reason I know is because...
you been in the lineup?
Yeah. And a homeboy say, hey, I almost threw you in jail. I'm like, how you going to throw me in jail? He goes, I almost lied. He goes, I had to pick somebody out of a lineup and you were in there.
Oh, damn. What were you in there for?
Well, I mean, I don't know, but he didn't say.
Oh, that's terrible, dog.
But yeah, I mean, they had me, I got a mug shot. I'm sorry, dog. I've been locked up, so my picture was in the lineup, and he's like, if I wanted to, I would have put you in jail.
Like, it was him, man.
Well, I would have had I'm sure, but...
You had an alibi that night?
I'm sure I had an alibi. It wasn't a woman of the night, I hope.
Yeah, I was with a woman of the night that night.
That's crazy,
but
right?
Yeah.
That's how I know that's how I do lineups now. Yeah. Besides television, SBU.
But see, that's what I'm saying, man. So it's like, that's another good theory, man, because there's some connections to be made there.
Well, there's too many what ifs.
That's the problem, and I think that's, over the years that investigation, of course, has gotten better, but that's why there's probably so many. Because I had a question. I was talking to a homie at work, and he said, why was there so much unsolved murders from like the 30s, the 40s, 50s? I'm like, dog, because investigation was still primitive, man. Right. Like they only had they had a small knowledge of how to get things done. I mean,
there's not a book.
Yeah, there wasn't a book on. Yeah, they're kind of writing the book for us. You know what I mean? As time we've gotten better, that's why now you can't commit a crime and get away with it that good. I mean,
you can't commit no crime. There's too much DNA, too much.
Oh yeah, dog.
Now they have touch DNA.
And then, man, there's cameras that you wouldn't even think, dog. Bro. They can tap into ATM cameras, and dog, it's crazy. Yeah. So it's like, but those are both good theories that I'm like, man, I don't know, dog. I mean, and after that, pretty much after that, there's not much more, man.
Right. This is a crazy, crazy story that has way too many, like I said, what ifs or not investigated like we would investigate.
Yeah, not enough thorough investigation on some of these leads.
Maybe this guy's a nobody. He was a John Doe until
the mom found him. Yeah,
I mean, even though he had a name, an alias, he was still a John Doe. How do they treat John Does now? Well, I mean, if they're insignificant, I don't want to say insignificant. That's a bad word, dog. That was pretty
I was going to
rough.
say, how do they determine that? This guy ain't worth nothing. This guy toss his body in the incinerator, brother.
You know, and I don't mean to say it like that. Like the indigenous
but like
people.
If it's not high profile.
The indigenous people.
Right.
There's
not much investigation into their disappearances.
So is that how they treated this? Because, well, obviously, this dude, we don't know who he is.
Well, it was
he didn't have money.
Yeah, it was some sort of high profile case.
I mean, he obviously told the lady, you know, I want to stay here because the other place was
just
charged
one night. Yeah, he did make that reference.
Yeah,
that
charged
the
too
other
much.
place was too high.
And whatever he paid there, I mean.
But see, even like that, man, was he hotel hopping to try to evade from somebody or?
Exactly,
I mean?
like
it's using different aliases.
But
like,
if I'm trying to evade somebody, I want a window by the street
so you
so
can
I can see who's coming. You know,
that's true. That is true, dog. And yeah, I mean, to this day, this case is cold, and you know, it's I say this though, there was a breakthrough, not a breakthrough, but there was another clue that was made in 2012. In 2012, dog, something popped up. So there was a guy, I guess like a journalist, in the Kansas City Library doing some research and stuff, and kind of putting out a little article on the case.
Right.
In his last lines of the article, he said that while he was doing like a little bit of research on this case and kind of bringing it back up, he received a call from an anonymous person that told him that they were cleaning out their grandparents' belongings, and they found a box with newspaper clippings and stuff like that,
right,
of the Artemis Ogletree murder.
Okay.
And they found a weapon, or not a weapon. I say a weapon. I'm just assuming it's a weapon, but there was an item of very high interest to the case that was mentioned in the case that they found in that box. And
that's one of the questions I was going to ask you. When you mentioned glass, was it like a drinking glass? Or what was it?
It didn't say. It just said a broken glass.
If you're saying, okay, go ahead with the piece of.
Yeah. So he questioned them. Well, what do you have? What is it? What's the item? And they're like, they didn't want to disclose it, and then they hung up. And that was the last thing that was ever done.
Who does that, dog?
I know. I would be pissed off. Why would you call?
Yeah, why would you call me if you're not going to disclose anything?
Why would you call me to tell me?
Oh, like they're going to blame you.
Dog. You know what that reminds me of? Has somebody ever called you and be like, hey, man, I got to tell you something. And they be like, never mind, it ain't that important.
Man,
hell no, you gotta tell me.
For no reason, yeah.
Dog, because me and my brother were the same. Bro, we got anxiety. So if you call me or if you text me,
I got something to say.
Like, hey man, can you call me real quick? Or no, if somebody texts you and says, hey, call me when you get a chance. I'm calling you right now. It ain't gonna wait.
Yeah.
And then somebody tells you, hey, I gotta talk. Have you ever had somebody tell you, hey, I need to talk to you when you get a chance? Not right now, but later on. No. What do you need, dog? Tell me now.
I got no reason.
Because until then, I'm gonna be worried about it.
Yeah, if it's between you and me, I'm gonna be like, shit. What did I tell Hobby?
Yeah.
Or what did I do? Made his kids mad.
You're gonna start.
What did I say to
popping
my sister?
Up in your head. So why would you call in saying, "Hey, I got some information on the case"?
It's not like they're gonna prosecute these people. Hey, if this is important, that could solve a 90-year-old
98-year-old case. Yeah, man.
Come on, man. Why wouldn't you?
Dog, and it's crazy because it's literally like, hey, I got some information on the case.
To me, that's a prank call.
This is the equivalent, dog. It'd be like, hey, I got some information on the case. Oh, really? What is it? I don't want to tell you. And then hang up. What?
I'd be pissed, dog. But you know what I'm saying?
So that's the last thing that's been said about the case.
How did this guy know? How did these people know that he was researching?
I guess because he was putting it out.
He was putting it out there.
Like on public forums or whatever.
So this was in 2012.
Yeah,
so I'm
2012.
sure it was out on like
the
Facebook
internet and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that he's doing research on the case and stuff. So
like
just
a PI type deal.
I guess so, or some type of like investigative journalist and stuff. Okay. So, but that is the last clue of this case that's ever existed. So,
well, it's out there, but we don't know what it is.
To this day, man, we don't know. That's crazy, right, man? But that story is wild, huh? There's so many, like...
Is it the weapon
so much uncertainty.
that cracked his head?
Yeah. What is it? That's what I wonder. Is it a weapon? Is it?
You know, and that's strange.
Maybe his ID.
Not strange. You
I
know
don't
what
know.
it is autopsies now can reveal damn near, tell you what kind of knife
was used or whatever,
or what kind of blunt object.
They're so advanced now, dog. And it's just, but man, this case, doing the research for this was so fun, man, because there's so many twists and turns. Yeah. Like, man, this man was acting weird. The different things
he's sitting alone in the dark.
Multiple days, dog, and then that's he only wanted to stay one night.
And then exactly.
And then the phone just being off the receiver over and over again.
He's just laying in bed with and
being drunk so many times.
I don't know if they had radio yet. I'm sure they did. I don't remember when radio was invented, dog.
Sir,
I wasn't there, so I really wouldn't know. Maybe if you would have given me another 30 years, I probably would have been there.
You might have been right there, yeah. But man, so I mean, to this day, it's unsolved, and
that was good though, man.
It's the murder in room 1046.
Murder in room 1046. It's a good story, man. A lot of I like the what ifs, because it just makes your mind work.
Yeah, it just makes you think like, man, I told you earlier, dog, doing this be making me want to become a detective, dog. Like, man, I want to dig into some stuff.
Be a PI. Why be a detective? Be a PI.
Yeah, I should.
Because a PI, you can go in room when you want. Detective, you got to.
I want to get the badge though. I want to be like Rush Hour, where he's like, flip it open, flip it closed. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. Detective Hobby on the case, my pal. It'd be like a Chuck E. Cheese card. Yeah, man. But man, dude, this is a good story.
It was a good story, man.
And so I think we got time for one more thing, man.
I know what's coming.
The segment we kicked off last week, man. Let's get ready to jump into our segment called Things That Piss Me Off, man. So check this out, man. Check this out, man. So last week we did, the drive-through. I got another drive-through for you.
Oh, here we go.
Because I just thinking of drive-throughs, it just, how much I get pissed off at the drive-through, dog.
I can imagine you do. I don't, dog. I got time. You got a family. You got kids crying in the back seat.
Dog, you ever pull up to the drive-through and man, especially at McDonald's, I'm sorry, let's air it out. Let's just let it be what it is.
Make it easy.
You go to McDonald's and be like, man, say you order a 20-piece nugget.
Okay.
You get to the window, they give you a 20-piece. There'd be 2 sauces in the bag.
Well, how many sauces you need?
More than 2. I got 20 nuggets in this box. I'm going to be done with that second sauce by the 4th nugget. Man, I like to...
You're a dipper, huh?
I'm a dunker, dog.
Oh, you're a dunker?
Yeah, I'm a dunker, dog. I'm trying to dunk my nuggets.
And then you ask for more, what they tell you?
Man, then you'll be like, can I get some more sauce? Oh, it's already in the bag. Hit her with that whip around. Man, that's not what I said. I said, can I have more sauce? And they act like it come out of their paycheck.
Yeah, dog.
And they'll give you one more.
There's some places that give you more. There's other places that...
Sometimes they'll hook you up. They'll put like a handful. Oh, yeah, I got you. Bam! I'm like, hell yeah. Because, man, sometimes I want a surplus so I can put it in my drawer. You know what I'm saying? Save it for another day. You feel me?
What kind of nuggets you going to... Anywhere you go, they got nugget sauce.
Yeah, man, but I'm just saying, man, goddamn, man, you give me more than 2 sauces for my nuggets. That pisses me off, bro. What do you think? I should be like, hey, man, do you, say you were on the other side of this window. Is this enough sauce for you? You feel me?
True. I'm not a big dunker. I dip.
Are you just a dipper?
Yeah.
You're not a dunker, you're a dipper.
A dunker, yeah.
No, I'm a dunker, dog. I like that. But
I like to taste my meat. What? The chicken.
What?
I like to taste the chicken nugget. Or whatever I'm dunking, dipping.
Oh, yeah, you like the nugget taste, huh? No, I need some sauce on that, boy. I damn near want it to be a wing.
You like it saucy.
Yeah, I like it saucy, man. But yeah, that pisses me off, man. I done asked for more sauce. And one time, I'm telling you, man, one time I had said that. I said, man, can I get a little bit more sauce? She's like, oh, I already put some in there. I said, God damn it, that's not what I said. Can you give me some more sauce, please? I'm like, man. And then she'll give me one. Oh, man, brother, look here. That'll
piss you off worse than what they put in the...
One sauce.
Bitch.
Man, I damn near want to get out of character on them. Hey, man, if you don't hand me some more sauce, we gonna have an issue, man.
Put your hand in that box or whatever and give me a handful.
You feel me, man? That pisses me off, dog. They act like it's gonna come out your paycheck.
I'm gonna get you one next week. I'm gonna bring you one next week.
Yeah, you can bring me one, man.
I'm not an angry person, dog.
I mean, I'm not angry either.
I don't mean it like that, but it's very,
not
very
a lot of
seldom.
Oh, you're just a chill guy.
I'm chill.
I'm just a chill guy.
Chill. It's not a whole lot of things that piss me off, dog.
Right.
I have to think about that. I have to think real hard. What really pisses me off?
Because, I mean, there's so many things that piss me off, bro. It's funny, man. That's why I like this segment, man, because I mean, just day to day, man, there's things that just piss you off, man. Little stuff, man. Like, come on, dog.
I mean,
I'll throw hands over my sauce.
I'm more of a who does that shit, you know? Instead of being pissed off.
Be like, who does that? Yeah. I'm gonna have to make that into your segment. Who does that segment? Now, for real, man. But yeah, that's this week's things that piss me off, man. I'm sure we'll be back with another.
That piss me off. I'm gonna have to go home and think about that one, dog. I'm not a pissed off guy, you know.
Yeah, you're just a chill guy, man. You know what I'm saying? Oh, man, dude. Thank y'all for watching, man. Thank y'all for sticking by with us, man, for another great episode, man. And we hope y'all enjoyed y'all's time with us, man. Thank y'all for everything y'all do, and y'all keep being you.
Hit them likes, subscribe, and follow, please.
Facts. And, man, at this point, we can wrap it up, man.
That's it.
Man, thank y'all for joining us, man, and until next week.
Peace.